social enterprise. Tonight, unfortunately, Christoph will not be joining us. He is unfortunately at home with a sick son, so we wish him and his son quick recovery. Tonight, we're joined by Tracey Chambers from the Clothing Bank. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Tracey. As usual, Marcus will be conducting an interview with her, and I will bring you guys some news just after the interview. So, first of all, thank you, Tracey, very much for joining us. Let's just make sure everybody can hear us fine and everybody's there.
Great,
Marcus,
super.
are you on?
Perfect.
Tracey,
Yeah.
Marcus, hi. Excellent, cool. All right, great stuff. Then I'm going to hand over the reins directly to you, Marcus, to jump us off with that interview. Yeah, over to you.
Okay, so thanks, Yaku. Just from me, welcome Tracey to tonight's show. And I mean, we've got quite a lot on our agenda. I mean, so Tracey, you seem to, there you are. And we're going to talk about initially Tracey's move from Woolworths and the idea of the Clothing Bank. And then we'll discuss exactly what Clothing Bank does, how its model works. We'll touch on this whole idea of how the Clothing Bank found that they needed to do much more than enterprise development to help the women that it targets to succeed. And we'll also talk about the poverty stoplight scale and how the Clothing Bank has used that as a measure or as a tool to make impact. And I'm also looking forward to talking about the whole field of enterprise development and how the Clothing Bank has been able to take advantage of the Black Economic Empowerment Codes in a really exciting way. And we'll start closing off then by quickly looking at micro-franchising, some of the work Clothing Bank's doing there. And yeah, the future of Clothing Bank and some advice from Tracey for social entrepreneurs that are trying to follow in her footsteps. So I'm sure we'll adjust the format as we go on, but yeah, time to jump into the interview. So Tracey, we first met many years ago, and I remember you had taken a sabbatical from Woolworths at the time, and you were involved in the social sector. You weren't quite sure how, and next thing I heard, you set up the Clothing Bank. So perhaps you can tell us a bit more about the decision.
Right, thanks, Marcus. So I was with Woolworths for about 9 years. In various roles, eventually as head of finance. In 2008, I really took stock of my life and realized that, as I say, I was a great human doing, but stopped being a human being, working really hard, all the things that we think we want, but really not. I knew I wasn't living my purpose. So I took a leap of faith at the end of 2008 and really just jumped off the corporate ladder with no other understanding of what I wanted to do. And at the time, I was volunteering at CB University and mentoring some young students, and I took over some of their accounting lecturing. Absolutely loved it. So I always knew that I wanted to teach, and I really wanted to use everything that I learned to date in my life really to work with people that hadn't been necessarily as fortunate as I was, and really make a difference. And then essentially it was a process of awakening, in a sense. So really becoming a human being again, connecting with other human beings, listening, looking at the signs, allowing my creativity that had been suppressed in a way for many years to awaken. And I know Tracey Gilmore, my partner, through a mutual friend, and we really connected, and really over a cup of coffee. Actually, there was someone on the radio talking about the food bank on my way to coffee, which I think was another sign. And so it wasn't that the idea had been there for years. I just really knew. I knew the retail sector well. I knew that I wanted to work with women. I knew that I wanted to teach. Tracey had been running a small NGO in the clothing space, the food bank on the radio on the way there, put that all in the mixing pot, add a cappuccino, and the idea of the Clothing Bank really came out of that. So
and that's quite a bit of synchronicity as well.
Yeah, and everything about the Clothing Bank is about synchronicity. Anybody who comes and works with us says it's unbelievable how things happen when they're meant to happen. And in my life, I've never experienced anything like this. It's actually quite incredible how many when it's not right, it doesn't happen. When the timing isn't right, when the timing's right, it absolutely happens. To the point that if we need a certain type of clothing because we're short on it, the next box will be that clothing. So, yeah, absolutely. It really was just about following, as I say, the signs along the way. Obviously founded in my retail understanding. So I knew that within the retail sector that they had a solution for their food, which was the likes of the food bank.
Food bank.
But they didn't have a solution for their clothing. And they were frustrated with what they were doing with their clothing. They were donating it to charities, but in a very dysfunctional way, which wasn't really helping charities. So a box of stuff was being donated to an orphanage, and it might contain a bra and a G-string and a pair of high heels.
That's not always appropriate.
And maybe if they're very lucky on a given day, a baby grower, which they could use. So we really just turned the model on its head, knowing that we had this great resource we could use, and we approached them to say we think we can use it more efficiently. You can still support your charities, but you can really empower people. You know, charity doesn't change lives. And if you want to change lives, we think we have a better solution, which is essentially what we proposed. And the key for Woolworths, who was our first retailer to come on board, was that it made business sense.
Yeah.
So it was a complete win-win. We were taking a problem off their hands, and we'll come later to BEE, but we were giving them something in return. And so it's actually one of the quickest decisions I've ever seen Woolworths make. They said, go for it. And it's millions and millions of rands that they are donating to us, but it makes business sense.
And I mean, that's just an important insight there, is that so many social enterprises that I work with, a lot of them still have this expectation of this idea of fundraising, that they are owed somehow because they are doing good. And what you've done is you came up with a pitch, essentially, that was irresistible for Woolworths. There was clearly, it made good business sense. There was a clear benefit for them. And the moment you presented that, they grabbed it.
Absolutely. And we didn't ask for money.
Yeah.
So right up front, we didn't ask for money. We didn't go with our hand out. We said we want your product. It's of no value to you, but it's of great value to us. And with this product, we're going to empower people, and we're going to build a sustainable organization. So that is essentially a compelling pitch. And bonus, you're going to get BEE points.
So it's like a triple sell then, in a sense.
Yeah. And in a sense, this waste was costing them money. So you're actually going to save money because we're going to pick it up for free. They were paying people to pick it up before.
And you carefully thought about the needs of Woolworths. I mean, you were a financial director there. You had an understanding of them to begin with.
Yes.
And what exactly does the clothing bank do? I mean, if you had to, how does your model work?
Okay, very simply, we have now relationships with most of the major clothing retailers in South Africa. Between about 1% of their product that they purchase will be considered waste. So customer returns product that doesn't sell in the season, and they donate the product to us. So on a monthly basis now, countrywide, we're getting somewhere between 70 and 90,000 garments donated, which are worth, on average, 60 Rand a garment at cost value. So that's, I can't do the maths, I'm terrible, a lot of money on a monthly basis that is being donated to us. We then recruit employed mothers into our enterprise.
Can I interrupt there? Can you just perhaps turn it to medium or something while we're here, just adjust your bandwidth usage?
Yes, sure, medium. It is on medium.
Is it, yeah, maybe put it in low in the middle of the thing. Yeah. Okay, that's better. I can see you again. So, anyway, you were saying?
Yeah, so they donate a significant amount of value to us on a monthly basis. We recruit unemployed mothers that have dependent children into a 2-year program. And essentially what we do is we use the clothing as the tool for teaching business principles. So it's a practical application of the training that we give. They start running a business within 2 weeks. They buy the product from us. So this isn't a charity. This is true empowerment. There's an economic exchange. They don't pay for their training, but they buy the product, And so the business model is essentially designed to be a self-funding business model. So it costs us about 30,000 Rand a year to have a woman in our program. That's what we invest in her in terms of development. We'll talk about the program in more detail, but it's a very, what I call high-touch program with a lot of support mechanisms, which is costly. That costs us about 30,000 a year. The direct outcome of that program is we want her to be a successful trader. So she then purchases product from us. If she's doing really well, she should be purchasing 42,000 Rands worth of merchandise from us a year, because there is a limit on how much we buy. And that's the perfect scenario. We generate a revenue of 42,000, and it costs us 30,000 to have her in the program. We're then self-sufficient. Currently, Cape Town, which has been in operation for 5 years, is 80% self-funded. So we're kind of directly invested in the performance of our women, which means that we're constantly looking for ways to improve what we provide to them as a service in terms of development, to ensure that their performance improves so that we can pay for the development.
And Tracey, I know that in the beginning, obviously, there was this assumption that perhaps it would be quite straightforward to help these women set up businesses. And then you realized that the women that you were targeting had a lot of almost life skills needs, social and psychological skills or help that they needed in order to be successful businesswomen.
Yeah. So we were incredibly naive on a number of fronts. I think we were naive on the funding front, which I see a lot of social entrepreneurs say, well, because, as you said earlier, because I'm a social business, somebody's going to fund me.
Yeah.
A social business is no different. You have to earn your stripes. You have to work out of the back of a garage. You have to be prepared to invest.
We were talking about how these women needed more skills than just business skills in order to succeed.
Yeah. So when we started, I came essentially from my own perspective of understanding business, thinking, well, we've sorted the supply, product fabulous. We definitely know the market, particularly trading in clothing within the township. So this is going to be really easy. We're going to give them some business skills and teach them how to keep a set of records, give them some mentoring, business mentoring, and how can they not be successful?
Yeah.
And sort of 9 months to a year into the program, we look back and we realize, well, first of all, not everybody was successful. Secondly, we were getting a high dropout rate for reasons way beyond our control. So family-related reasons, illness, domestic violence, alcohol and drug abuse, all sorts of peripheral societal issues. We also realized that the women's ability, their coping mechanism, was pretty low. A small thing could really cause them to lose motivation or decide not to persevere. They almost had a mindset that I'm doomed to fail. I can't do this. So every time there's an obstacle in their path, they go, okay, therefore, you see, I can't.
Yeah.
I've just proven that to myself again. So we realized that we actually had to have a program that spoke not just to the theory, but we really had to get the hearts, minds, spirits of the individuals. And we had to recognize that these were very underdeveloped women in the main that we were working with. So I personally now read every single woman's life story. And the stories are very common, extremely common. Stories of abandonment, alcohol abuse, physical abuse. And when you've suffered a trauma...
But so firstly you realized that you needed to do much more than provide business skills, and that many of these women had come from very difficult backgrounds. And now, as I understand it, it's actually almost a 2-year program, empowerment program that you have.
So we started with, naive thought that we were 1 year quick sticks and all of these birdies that we gathered up would want to fly, and of course we were entirely wrong. So it's become a very holistic program where we almost have an equal amount now of life skills, and we deal with everything from you know, the ability to plan, which we struggle, we find the women really struggle with, all the way to parenting skills. And really with the philosophy, you know, healthy mind, healthy body, we find a lot of health issues. Healthy mind, healthy body, healthy family will then equal a healthy business. If we can get all those sorted, if we can build her self-esteem, and if we can build her self-confidence, build her essentially where she learns to value herself and set boundaries for herself, she will be able to withstand some of the challenges or manage some of the challenges, because they're not going to go away. A lot of them are not going to go away. Unfortunately, the issues within the community are quite hectic. But it's building the resilience to cope with it, and then you have to support her. So we have life coaches who work with the woman every 2 weeks, and they are only accredited life coaches, trained in psychology, to deal with those patterns, the repeater. We call it solution-focused coaching. So recognizing that there's a pattern here and asking the woman, what does she think she can do about it? And you need qualified people, because we found in the beginning we didn't have qualified people right in the beginning. People go into sort of bleeding heart trying to do things for the woman, which doesn't help, because then you create expectations.
And Tracey, just to interrupt there, I mean, we had the similar insight from James House when we interviewed them a couple months ago, that to create real change, you've got to really go for a lot of depth. And that with this obsession of scaling that a lot of people have nowadays, and a lot of people are scaling too wide and too superficially. And
definitely.
What you realize there is that you need highly skilled specialists to really change someone's life.
Yes. And I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Vivian Schultz's work on the A to B movement. Yes. She talks about it takes 1 year of high touch, high development to move a person one level on the dependency scale. Yeah. And most of our women need to move 2 to 3 levels. So that means 2 to 3 levels of development. And some of them are pretty stuck. There's almost like a stuntedness in emotional development. Often when someone has faced a trauma, particularly at a young age that they haven't dealt with, they haven't been heard, there's an emotional stuntedness that really creates a lot of stuckness. You know, and it almost becomes a pathology. Yeah. Which you've got to figure out how you work with that.
It's like a neurological pattern that's very difficult to break. And
absolutely.
Sort of lay new pathways down. But it's very nice to see. It's very nice to see someone doing something so thoroughly. It's just always encouraging for me.
We like results, so you know it was really a process of discovery. Is like what can we do to change this outcome, and seeking advice. I think from people who'd had experience in the space, because there's a lot of burnout in the space, where people say, well, you know, I try to help and it's not possible to help. We have to find solutions if we want to change the landscape of South Africa. We have to. And you know, I really believe that we have found solutions. The other thing is you've also got to realize what somebody who is undereducated and underdeveloped emotionally is capable of relative to running a business. Yeah. You know, I always I kind of want to laugh when we talk about, you know, we've got 56 youth unemployment rate and we can't find basic work for them. Let's make them all entrepreneurs. I'm not sure we're listening to ourselves. So, you know, if you create a complex business model for these individuals, they are sure to fail. Of course, you'll always get your outlier, but they're almost guaranteed to fail. And all you've done is create another failure in their lives, which has set them further back. They won't want to start again because they're just going to expect another failure. So we're not helping if we...
So Tracey, almost listening to what you say, there's an ethical responsibility for organizations only to do things properly and only to do things when they're almost confident that it could work, or when they're committed to making it work.
Yes, but you know what I learned is that I was looking at things from my own perspective. So I assumed that the model we designed at the beginning relative to what the requirements were would be adequate, because that's what I thought people needed. So it only, I think you need to be, it's kind of process of discovery, and organizations need to be sharing what they've learned, because I think there are many failures out there and not enough people talking about why we failed.
And Tracey, I mean, since we're talking about impact, I know that the Clothing Bank is using the poverty stoplight scale as a way of measuring almost the transformation of these women in your programs. And perhaps you could just tell us a bit more about this poverty stoplight scale of yours.
Okay, so the Poverty Stoplight tool is a tool that we were gifted by an organization in Paraguay, where I went to a conference to receive an award, developed by an organization called Fundación Paraguay. And I'd been asking, I'm an accountant, so we like to measure. So we were measuring everything. We were doing living standards measures, we were doing sort of attitudinal studies, all sorts of things. And, on paper getting good results, and obviously we were measuring their business performance. But I had this niggling thing, were we really moving the needle of poverty? Was this superficial change, or was this deep change? And I wasn't sure. We had a great performer in our business who made a lot of money. And when I did an interview and said, how much money have you got in the bank today? And she told me nothing. Then I asked myself, what have I really done? I've given her a temporary respite for 2 years. And now that she's exiting the program, graduating, you know what? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I've eradicated poverty in her life. So this tool really, was a light bulb moment for me, where it measures poverty not just superficially. A lot of poverty indicators talk about, income, housing, water, sanitation, six sort of living standards measures. Do you have a TV, etc., cell phone, all the things to judge wealth. And this tool went so much deeper. For example, just to give you an understanding of one of the indicators that hit me was the question around, yes, it asks, do you have a house? But then a secondary question, it asks, are there separate bedrooms for adults and children?
Yes.
And for me, that is a real issue. That is a real issue. There are major things happening in society because kids are being exposed to things at a too young an age, and that then leads to further problems. So
sorry, in Cape Town, we've got a massive problem, or in fact all around the country, with things like backyard dwellers, where you'll have, I think it's 2.5 to 3 families living in a single house. And
absolutely.
You'll have families living in Wendy houses in the back garden. And,
exactly.
Sharing one bathroom with the rest of the house.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how I want to live. And it talks about, we were seeing businesses fail, not because the woman was stupid or hadn't tried, because her brother was a tick addict and kept stealing all her stuff. So no matter how much we tried to solve her problem, unless we solve the problem with the tick addict or allow her to develop boundaries and focus on that issue, she's never going to be successful at business. So we've adopted this tool. It measures 50 indicators across 6 dimensions. Some of them are quite, what you would call soft indicators, such as somebody's ability, their networks. How many forums are you part of? How do you resolve conflict? Those kind of things. And what it does is it measures it on a scale of 3, being very poor, poor, and not poor. And then it uses a picture system with fairly easy to understand definitions. And what I like about this tool is the family it's a family tool. It believes that poverty is within families, not just individuals, and that there's resources within family. And for the first time, the family self-diagnoses. Nobody tells them whether they're poor. They choose what indicator is relevant for them. And we're having wonderful dialogue in that, where husbands and wives are dialoguing these issues. And then they are seeing very visually, because it's a technical tool, it's done on an app, very visually what their situation looks like. And there's aha moment in that. First of all, we're seeing that certainly the people we work with, and they are poor, but they have more greens, in other words, not poor, than they would have expected. There are about half of the indicators they would be considered not poor. And that in itself is very positive, because they go, wow, we're not as poor as somebody else.
Not as bad as they thought, yes.
Not as bad as they thought. And then it gives them a very, very clear line of sight in actually, what do I need to do to move the needle of poverty per indicator? And then with the coaching and mentoring that we do, we help them prioritize which ones they're going to work on. So we know that if they work hard at their business, that the business needle, the income needle will move.
Yes.
What do they do with that money? Decisions are they making? Do they go and buy beautiful new 3,000 Rand pair of shoes? Or do they put plumbing in their house?
So it gives them a lot of power, and it's very encouraging, very supportive, the way you've been measuring.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It gives them power over, and it makes them realize that only they have control over their life, and life is about choices. Yeah.
And I'm assuming as well, you didn't just take a bunch of indicators out of a box, that you select and developed indicators that was appropriate for what you were doing, and then you calibrated the 3 scores for each.
Yes, so Fundación Paraguay developed the tool, and they developed 50 indicators mainly for use in Paraguay, although the tool is now becoming a global movement. Yeah. And it's used extensively. And what we did is we looked at the headings of those 50 indicators and said, are these appropriate for South Africa? And are they appropriate for the metropole? Because our program is basically in metropolitan areas. Yeah. Took out about 5 and added in 5. So we still got back to 50, which was a bit of a flip. And then we workshopped every single indicator with a group of about 100 women over a series of 5 workshops to get them to define what poverty means in South Africa. And then we correlated that back with a whole lot of studies, Carnegie papers, as well as the Paraguayan indicators, to see if it sort of all correlated, and they were pretty similar. And we've been running it now for about a year, and we're now extending the opportunity for other organizations to use it. And we get very little feedback. We ask continuously, but there doesn't seem to be any debate, really. I'm sure it will evolve, but in the main agreement that these are the core issues that...
And Tracey, what's important here, just for our listeners, is that you put a lot of effort into customizing them to suit the work that you do and measure the right things. And then secondly, you actually involved your beneficiaries in that process of developing these indicators, so that they felt a sense of ownership of them.
Yeah, very much. The other most important thing when we do the survey is it's not for us, it's actually for them. And I think so much monitoring and evaluation is all about give us information, we're going to take it away, and we're going to do a whole lot of beautiful graphs and reports. And, you know, literally taking from the poor and not actually leaving them with anything. They're actually left with a tool, a visual tool.
You're actually putting power back in their hands.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Tracey, we just need to, since we're more than halfway through, talk about enterprise development and have a slight change of topic. So, you know, we've obviously got these Black Economic Empowerment codes that have recently changed again. And, you know, within that area, and you've got a number of almost products, as I understand it, around if it's enterprise development, skills development, employment equity, that type of thing. And perhaps you could, if you share a bit about what these products are, the different products in the enterprise development space that the Clothing Bank offers.
Okay, so the primary product that we offered pre the codes and post the codes was the fact that we were receiving donated merchandise, and we were able to then offer the retailers points because that merchandise had some value. They could recover some value from it if they sold it, but they donated it. So that was the primary, and they claim that under enterprise development. The Clothing Bank is classified as a third-party enterprise development service provider. So even though we're a non-profit, the fact that all of our women are 100% Black women-owned businesses qualifies our program as an enterprise development. So that's very attractive, and I mean millions of rands worth of points have been claimed by our retail partners.
And Tracey, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt a bit here just to clarify things for our listeners. And so is there a reason why they would give via their enterprise development department and not via their whole socioeconomic development or CSI department?
Yes. Most of them are already doing SED work and are doing almost typically, what would very much be classified as social work, not necessarily social economic development work. So they would be supporting early childhood development centers or orphanages, or that real sort of CSI spend, which was being claimed under the code. So they didn't they had that sorted. SED was sorted for them. ED they were struggling with, and I mean this was a solution where they didn't have to do anything. They actually could get points for solving a problem, for us solving a problem. So that was the backbone of our model.
And sorry, Tracey, sorry to interrupt again. What is an enterprise development intermediary? Because obviously you've become accredited as one, and that really helps you. But quite a lot of our audience may not know that much about it.
Okay, so what we do is we work to take people who were previously unemployed to run enterprises. And those enterprises can be sole traders. As long as they are running a business, there's proof that they're running a business. The enterprise signs an affidavit to say they're running a business, and we have to provide our rating agency with proof that those businesses are running. They just have to come and see what we do, and they can see it. But we give them business records of the business owner. So an intermediary is the person providing the product, like we do, the training, etc. The difference between us and many other training service providers is other training service providers just train and hope and pray that the person's running a business. We can guarantee that the person's running a business. If you just train, that's not enterprise development. The person has to be running a business, and you have to prove that they're running a business. And you have to prove that the funds or the product that you're receiving, that the donor has taken enterprise development points, is not for you. It is flowing to the enterprise that you are supporting.
Okay. So that's the donation side. So the donation of the clothing, they register as an enterprise development expense, and they put it through you as an enterprise development intermediary.
Correct.
Are there any other ways that you exploiting or using the codes to your advantage?
Obviously any loan or any grantation to us can also go under under that category. So with the new codes opening up, we've looked at it and really put a lot of time into developing our strategy around this. And actually, the new codes talk beautifully to the work we do. It actually is exact intention of the codes. So under the new codes, quite interestingly, we can actually take ownership in companies. We've now registered and classified as a broad-based share ownership scheme. And so I could take a 10% share in Woolworths, for example. The clothing bank, the non-profit, can own 10% of Woolworths. So we're a black shareholder. We're considered which points. We considered a black woman shareholder, which is additional points. We considered a youth shareholder, which is a special category, because a lot of women are below the age of 35. So there are significant points that an entity can get for ownership. What we're looking at from
Sorry, Tracey seems to have faded out again.
Skills development also opens up for us. Am I there?
Yes, now you're back. And
okay.
Are you an owner? Is Clothing Bank currently an owner or broad-based owner of any corporate at the moment?
No, we're in the process at the moment of talking to a number of organizations who are quite interested in this. Most organizations are only really looking at the new codes now. They've all been, many of them have been certified under the old codes and quickly got in there. So this is starting to really the debate is starting to heat up. Done a number of seminars at the Chamber of Commerce, and working with a number of sort of key intermediaries to get the message out. We won't do a deal with anybody. I don't want, R1,000 scream and have to, the effort of ownership. It's got to be win-win.
Yes, and it's got to fit your values and align with what you're doing as well.
I think the beauty of that from a corporate perspective is that you can actually fulfill your CSI objectives if women empowerment is part of the CSI mandate. The ownership is the tool, which is a really interesting way of looking at it. And I don't think the corporate mind has quite got around that. I think that is so much better than employing one individual. Here you're employing the clothing bank to do its work. You're empowering the clothing bank to do its work forever, and it's a sustainable ownership strategy in a sense. And it's obviously low risk from a corporate perspective because they're not getting one person having, don't feel like they're giving away the business in a sense. So they're palatable, especially for medium-sized businesses which might have a small shareholding. And then the third category is skills development. So under the new codes, skills development is opened up for us beautifully for people on the generic codes that spend double the amount of skills development. But the difference between the old codes and the new codes is that you can, as a corporate, spend money on unemployed people. In fact, there's a specific category for that and specific points for that. There is a lot of debate on what you need to do. Does it need to be accredited training or doesn't it? We are fortunate in that our second-year program is an accredited program, and therefore we believe will definitely qualify. And a lot of people are starting to engage with us on that. And then, of course, we do qualify under SED as well. And I think there's a lot of debate whether they really mean what they mean in the codes around socio-economic development.
Development of black people. And
but and we obviously category because we're on it.
Yes. So in a sense, you've got 4 products at the moment. There's your social investment or socio-economic development product, which is essentially focused around the socio-economic development of sort of historically disadvantaged South Africans. The second one is around skills development. The third one is around ownership, and the fourth one is around enterprise development.
Yes, and there is a
number of the codes.
There is a fifth one as well, which is we are taking some of our training to market. We've just purchased one of our live development space as well, and also be able to claim procurement points for that. They would be buying service from us. So actually, every angle is almost covered.
So Tracey, then, where does a non-profit or social enterprise start if they want to find a way to benefit from the VE codes beyond just the standard corporate social investment grant that that they typically pitch for? And where's the starting point for them?
I think they need to start with an expert. So the codes are complicated, and what I would say to them is go engage one of the, not the verification agencies, but one of the consulting companies that advise corporates on their VE strategy, and actually get them to look at your business model or your idea and fit your idea to the codes and tell you where the codes would be relevant. That's invaluable because you can actually do a lot of damage by promising people points and then not actually really complying because you got a superficial knowledge of the codes.
Yeah.
And your administration is strong.
And I just want to endorse that because I've certainly referred a number of my clients to some VE strategists, and they've put together some very, very creative offerings because of that.
And it doesn't have to cost a fortune. Many of them will give you, discounted rates because hopefully one day they'll refer their clients to you. So they're, hopefully developing a solution for the clients.
So definitely that's the way to go. And I know that I just want to sort of get to the end, a bit of the interview, because I see that our time is running short. So I know that a clothing bank is obviously, there's much more going on than what we discussed today. And I mean, there's your microfinance, there's your business in a box type work that you're doing, and so on. But I'd like to just skip past that for now and focus on your advice. So, what advice would you give to a social entrepreneur that's starting out in their journey? Someone that wants to follow in your footsteps or take inspiration from what you're doing.
Sorry, Marcus, can you just repeat that?
Okay. So what advice would you give to a social entrepreneur who's starting out and who's perhaps very inspired by the work that the Clothing Bank is doing? And what are perhaps one or two things that you would like them to know?
Don't underestimate how hard it is.
Yeah.
Particularly if your social enterprise involves developing people. Coming back to the beginning of our conversation, it's much, much harder than you think. Don't underestimate the funding landscape. You've got to have a compelling business model.
And your point one was, around being thorough and realizing that it's quite difficult. And so we missed point two because I think you faded out then.
Okay, so point two was, I think, is you need to have a compelling business model, and you need to build a business. You mustn't let the word social cause you to think you can build anything less than a fantastic business model. You need to have strong systems and strong processes. I certainly believe that that's one of the things that has differentiated us from everybody else, not just our development model, but the fact that people trust our business processes. And I've seen a lot of other organizations, they're not necessarily business experts, try and build models that might have the technical solution or whatever it is, but not actually have the business in place. And then the last point that I was making is I do believe this has been a great defining factor, is we have built an incredible team. And this is where you can leverage the word social. I believe I've got a team of executives that are all retired like me, and they want to make a difference, and they can actually tangibly feel the difference. So, you can get highly qualified, highly experienced, highly motivated people working for you for half of what they learn in the corporate world, by walking out of there feeling like they're paid 3 times a day,
because they can clearly feel that they're making a difference. Okay. Sorry, your last point, Tracey, you faded out there. You said you'd be able to get these people because they obviously had a sense that they could make a difference and were prepared to sacrifice some salary in order to do that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you back again.
Okay, so my last point, did you catch my point around building a great team?
Yes, and how you were saying that people can have a real tangible sense that there is change that is happening through the Clothing Bank. And because of that, you're able to attract people that at a far cheaper rate, perhaps, than they would be paid in the corporate sector.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we're going to keep losing everyone now.
Yes. So Yaku, just to from your perspective on this interview, and what are perhaps one or two insights that that you've realized just listening to Tracey this evening?
I think there were two major things that sort of came through for me. One is what Pat said last time with our interview with him. This idea that we kind of need to get together more and talk about where we failed, why we failed, and how we failed. I think that's something that's popping up quite often. I know Joburg's also having a cock-up fest, as they call it.
Yeah.
And maybe not just chatting about all the cock-ups that everybody's been, because all of us do. You try something and it doesn't work, and instead of being embarrassed or feeling that you're inadequate for making a mistake, I think people should celebrate the fact that they've tried it, and not just tried it from a conceptual point of view. Really put their hands in the dirt and try to make it work. And if it doesn't, you realize that there's either your idea is wrong or your implementation's wrong, and then you need to start picking at what's going to work best. So that definitely stood out for me, and then also the idea that don't underestimate the complexity of what you're trying to achieve here. I think the point that she made about don't let the word social fool you is something that should be brought up a lot more in our conversations right through the industry. This idea that you need a resilient, solid business model in order to make this work. Whether it's innovative or not, or whether it's creative or not, I don't think that that's really the issue. I think as long as it's solid and it's the proof is really in the pudding.
Because Jaco, that overlaps quite closely with sort of what I've learned from this interview is again, underneath the social part of the business, there's a very solid, viable, and successful business. So that's, she's, obviously with a financial background and training, made sure that the bricks and mortar of the business work well together. And the second thing which I really like about what she said is this theme of thoroughness. Particularly in the age where everyone is trying to do things fast, make it big, scale it around the country, that type of thing. She's been extremely thorough, and at the clothing bank, they've made sure that every little bit works properly before they almost put on the next bit or build the next layer. And they've taken
the rules with any machine. The more moving parts you have, the more likely something can go wrong. And if each individual part isn't almost expertly engineered, you're just opening yourself up for a lot of disappointment, perhaps.
Yes. And so I think that it doesn't look like Tracey's coming back. I suspect her hotel connection must be having some challenges. I've just got an email from Tracey quickly saying that unfortunately she can't log in again. There's just some challenges with the internet at the hotel. And I just want to point out, where could someone find out more about the Clothing Bank and what it does?
Well, I think the best way to do it is through the Clothing Bank's website, which is www.theclothingbank.org.za. So that's www.theclothingbank.org.za. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, I think they're on all the social media platforms that really matter. And that's just about the best place that you can go and check. Of course, if you Google the Clothing Bank, you'll also find, if I remember correctly, a few television interviews and other news items that Tracey, both Traceys actually have been on. So I think that's a great place to start.
And there's a lot more going on with the Clothing Bank than what we discussed this evening. This evening we focused on sort of their method, the way they're measuring the impact, and on the enterprise development offerings. But I'm sure that we could have spent 2 or 3 more hours just talking about the other elements of what they do.
I think if you really sit and break the Clothing Bank down, you could probably spend days running a workshop just on everything that they've done, to be honest. But yeah, that was a great interview. I'd like to thank Tracey for her time. I know her time's quite valuable. She's traveling and has made an hour to share their experience and more about the Clothing Bank with us. So thank you very much to Tracey. And also, many kudos to the entire Clothing Bank team, who have done such a great job of building such a resilient and impressive and in some ways innovative and in some ways really thorough business model. So I just want to congratulate the guys on that. As always, our video will be live or has been running live and will be available on our Facebook page and website as well as on YouTube. And I'll also drop some info on there with regards to getting a hold of Tracey or just getting some more info on the Clothing Bank.
Okay, I think that's it for the evening, Jaco.
Fantastic. Thank you guys very much. Thank you, Marcus, for your time as always. Let's hope Christoph is back with us next month. I'm sure he will be. And just thanks to all of our listeners and everybody that's listening afterwards. Keep an eye out for our next show. It should be in the 1st or 2nd week of May, and we'll be announcing in this week who our special guest will be. So thanks to everybody. Have a great night, and see you guys next month.